Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today on November 12th, 2021. I am Nick Kinoki, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm excited for today's Where Do We Go From Here talk. Before we get underway, I just want to say thank you to our patron sponsors. We couldn't do this without you. That's Definitive Logic, Onuma Systems, ABS Quality Evaluations, and ABS Group. We are very grateful for their support, as well as our organizational members, especially Grant Thornton. They put us in touch, specifically Moshe Nelson, who's on the panel today, specifically got us Martin O'Malley to speak for our keynote. So we are very grateful for Grant Thornton and Moshe's continued support as well. And before we start the event, I would just say, if you're out there watching, we want to hear from you. This is hopefully a discussion about where we can go from here after almost six weeks of conference and great panels, roundtables, you name it. So please send any comments, questions, or feedback to the chat, and we can get that addressed and talk more about the future. And I believe Jim Dieter is going to start us off with a few thoughts and maybe another call to action.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Sure.
Wow, what an awesome array of events we've had. A remarkable series of events. So I don't have too much to say at the beginning here, because we'd like to hear from you. People participating and listening in. A big takeaway, my big takeaway from the events is this year we really focused on a presentation concept that we call roundtable discussions. So if you watched a lot of our events, a lot of the events didn't feature a lot of PowerPoints. They featured a group of really interesting, knowledgeable people, often from different points of view, talking about what was important and what could be done and what led to success and what will lead to success in the future. So those roundtables and their success, I thought is my big takeaway, and that we plan to continue those and use that format in different ways going forward. And have some great ideas, I think, already suggested as a part of the events. But what I'd like to ask you all to do is to, in the chat, put in one or more, maybe not too many, but 1, 2, 3, maybe, your takeaways. What are you going to remember from this? What did you get from this event that's going to make a difference for you and for your organization? Or however you want to cast that question. What's your takeaway? Positive or negative, as the case may be. And if you could share that, and then we'll circle back around to those as we go forward. Now, Mike, am I handing it back to you, or am I handing it to Moshe? I can't remember. We changed the order 3 times.
We changed it 3 times, and I'm going to just briefly go over some of some of the highlights were, because we think that part of what our next steps are to build on the highlights. And it started off with the keynote, which, as Nick said, went really well because we had the former governor of Maryland, thanks to Grant Thornton. And because we had the former governor, we had former Congressman Ben McAdams, because Ben McAdams turns out to be a protege of Governor O'Malley, and that was just spectacular. And by the way, that opening event was an equity event, advancing equity with infrastructure asset leadership. And it was accepted and understood, and we couldn't have been happier with that. So thank you very much, Moshe. Portland debuted an incredible asset management policy through our event. That was spectacular. That policy is so good, it could double as an equity policy. And the Government Finance Officers Association of America is going to work with the ALN to help promote that policy. Just got off a meeting with them. They're really stoked to be working with the ALN. And personally, Chris Silke saying that interaction with the ALN helped give him the confidence to include more equity in their asset management policy was just the personal highlights of, for me, but for the ALN to be doing that we can claim a solid victory on that. So, wow, let's keep on building on that. We connected with the Licensing Executive Society on intangibles, and we're working with them to do something in 2022. We used this conference to launch the Industry Asset Leadership Boards, which are taking targeted actions, and I think we'll be expanding those too. ALN Espanol took a major step forward by showing the US the value of certification. There was a program in Spanish and one in English because it's so important for English speaking people to realize the value of certification. So that was great. We deepened connections with federal agencies, including the GAO, US Air Force, Western Area Power Administration, Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Interior, and now we're connected publicly with EPA. So that's spectacular. Again, Moshe and Grant Thornton introduced the law enforcement sector asset leadership strategy. So now all the other sectors have a template to work from. So thank you so much for that, Moshe. Our connection to the Australian Asset Management Conference was reinforced with an aviation focused program that was really spectacular. And we've got 2 more planned with AMC already in 2022. We gave the US TAG a newfound visibility through their membership in the ALN and the panel. And I'm excited to explore what can happen as we raise the US TAG up. I think that's incredible, the opportunity there. And I love that we reconnected with Admiral Allen, who gave a keynote to the Department of State talks, which went spectacular. And the Department of State kept referencing Admiral Allen, so they liked it too. And we got a thank you letter from the Department of State saying they enjoyed being having different divisions connected through us. So what an honor that is for us. And then we ended with the National Academy of Sciences, Federal Facility Council, and Board on Infrastructure and Constructed Environment. What a great presentation that was, and what an honor for the ALN to be acknowledged as helping them get their word out. So I think we can claim an unqualified success, but what do we do going forward? So that's why we're having this open meeting, and we're first opening it up to Moshe Nelson. So Moshe, if you'd like to give us some thoughts, and then we'll be able to make anybody who wants to be a panelist be a panelist.
Thanks so much, Mike. And I definitely agree with you and Jim. I mean, what a just incredible conference. It seems to get longer every year now that we I think are mastering doing these online and pulling in speakers and references from across the globe. It's just incredible how much has been accomplished. I think this is I want to say my 4th ALN conference, if that makes sense. And I'll key in off of one of the last things you said, which is what are the next steps? How do we actualize what we learned in the conference, the connections that we made across different stakeholders in the asset management community, state and local government, commercial, federal as well. And I think that the law enforcement and sector asset leadership strategy was a good example of how we've taken an original national strategy, focused it in on a subsector, and then tried to produce a product that brought together and coalesced a group of asset management leaders, in this case in the law enforcement realm, around a shared understanding as well as priorities that enables better collaboration and a more effective asset management community. And a lot of the remarks that I received after my session in particular was just the appreciation that this this conversation has continued, right? We started it before the pandemic and have been able to sort of muscle through some of the worst of our global experience, and now have come out with a way forward. And the continued interest in implementing ISO 55000, to working together as a community and having something that the organization can point to, right? In this case, the law enforcement community, as a catalyst for continued collaboration and involvement, I think speaks well to essentially what are the next steps. Now, some other macro observations. ALN has just done such an incredible job of being resilient and pivoting quickly to topics that matter, right? When we talk about equity in asset management, environmental considerations, infrastructure bill, I think that's one of the things that ALN has been able to do very well, was pull in stakeholders from across the community with unique experiences in these areas, and then have a meaningful dialogue where people can walk away and have tangible outcomes to help their own span of control, but as well as a community to reach out and determine other best practices and sharing and capabilities. And I'll tie that into some of my span of control. I lead our asset management practice at Grant Thornton. I also oversee our Department of State and USAID and international accounts. And I saw the Department of State day. It was so incredible to hear from A Bureau as well as Overseas Buildings Operations, and how they've been applying ISO 55000 within OVO or within the department overall, and translating that to a lot of the work that my teams have been seeing across consular affairs, with the implementation of new passport systems, or within diplomatic security with improving and securing overseas operations and infrastructure. It was just, you don't get those same conversations necessarily day to day that look at the entire department and what the priorities are and what the challenges are and where they have come from, or specific to OBO and what strategy they've been employing, how they've been involved with GAO. I absolutely loved it. When Tracy said, we reached out to GAO, we worked together to identify what some of these pain points are that we were having, so that it can be a collective effort for the improvement of the specific bureau. You don't get that a lot in the federal government, right? It's just that collaboration and utilizing every single mechanism that is available to improve asset management, including the integration of ISO 55000 was a takeaway that I think was extremely valuable and a best practice example for other agencies. So those were some of the main takeaways I had, but just such a fantastic conference, and looking forward to how this is continuing. After you take a break though, Mike, you need to get some rest. You need to come up for air for a little while before you take on the world again.
So what do you think would be beneficial for your clients if you were to come up with some ideas for next year, things that you would, because like USAID, oh boy, we love to help them in any way possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that there's probably some pull through from the Department of State at the department level, and there may be already some best practice sharing that's happening there, so I can't speak for that. But we want to make sure that we do radiate the recordings and the value of all this knowledge that has been created. Right, this isn't going into the ether, right? You all do a fantastic job of putting it up on YouTube, and then as a community, taking these videos, dissecting what really struck a chord, and then continuing to radiate those lessons and share that amongst each other with people that could not attend. I think that's an important, easy, quick win that people undervalue, is just the fact that this is permanent now, and this can help others go forward. Yeah, I know, Nick, I see that you do have a ton of editing to do, so I'm not putting you on the spot there.
So Nick, why don't you turn on and make some comments live?
Well, I guess I'll start by saying I am excited. Like you said, we've got to take a moment to rest, recuperate, and get some air after this long and powerful, continuous event that we've had going on for weeks now. But I am so excited to get to that work of video editing because it's storytelling. I mean, and I get the opportunity like an artist to take the things that people have, the glorious success stories we've heard painted before our eyes by, powerful executives in the US government and private sector. And I get to, put these things together in concise, ideally, videos so that anyone anywhere in the world for future generations, hopefully now, but for anywhere in the future, can watch them and be touched by those stories. Because I am a firm believer that data is great to inform decision making and all that, but storytelling, that weaves data and told from someone you consider a peer or an expert, or that is the most impactful things that can change hearts and minds and motivate the big transformations and changes that it has been made clear we need to make as a country and as various industries around asset management and around equity and leadership.
Excellent. So go ahead, Jim.
So Nick, you shared a number with us on the number of views on those YouTube videos over the last couple months. You want to share what that was?
Yeah, well, it was 1,000 views in the last, it was either week or month. And that, that's what was a new high for us on our YouTube channel for sure. We have always been more about quality of the number of members and participants in our organization than quantity. We've never, had the numbers like, other organizations as far as social media views and engagements, but it's always one of the strengths of our organization has always been the quality of engagement from our organizational members and for the people that participate in our discussions, both live and then in social media afterwards. Thanks for highlighting that, Jim. Yeah, we are growing in numbers as well as quality.
Yeah, it is. We've always had a much more targeted audience. I've done a lot of presentations in my life, and a lot of times it's just one person that was there that was really the target audience of the difference. And we are the Asset Leadership Network. So we're not trying to be all things to all people. We're trying to be impactful, and we really gauge our success on impact and our members' success more than our success or the number of people that show up. But having said that, to be able to say a lot of people watched it is still cool.
Jim, and it occurs to me to say just two more things briefly. And one, that's like you said, we are the Asset Leadership Network, and it was shown time and time again how important visible leadership within an organization, how important that is for any good asset management practices or transformation, to occur in an organization, especially in something like the Air Force or the State Department. It was amazing to hear about the leadership that took place there to facilitate those big changes. And the other thing that Cecilia makes me think of is to say, we want to be an inclusive organization. We can't be everything for everyone, but we want to make leaders. We want to empower people at all levels of the workforce and of all industries and disciplines to make themselves leaders and to talk about the holistic and comprehensive ways of systems thinking that have been discussed in this conference and the ways that it can advance value and equity. So we want to reach the leaders, and we want to make everyone leaders is my kind of point.
Interesting. And to the point that Moshe was saying about the videos, Nick is willing to provide specific segments. If you tell him X panel between minute 3 and minute 5. Don't make them any more than 2 minutes. And preferably, we've learned from Circo, 30-second videos are the best. So,
And just to clarify what Mike's saying, go to our YouTube channel, and if you watch a video, one of the full panel discussions that's an hour long, and you want a clip of yourself or something particularly powerful you saw that you'd love to share with a colleague and not have to have them sift through an hour-long video, if you reach out to me with timestamps, it can make my editing process very streamlined, and I would be happy to provide anyone more resources that they can use to share with other people and amplify these messages. So please reach out.
yeah. And then even a strategy. Nick, one of the things I thought of is maybe we download, I download the texts, find out every place where somebody mentioned the ALN, and then we have a string of people complimenting the ALN. But that's just our promotional, that's not an asset management message. So I take that one back. So Jim, if you would like to say anything more, and then we'll promote Jack Kelly to a panelist. And please, anybody else that would like to speak, let us know and we'll promote you to a panelist.
You don't even have to ask Cecilia, just promote Cecilia. But, yeah.
All right, Cecilia, you are promoted.
The one thing that was on my mind, and the one that's still running through my mind, and without in any way, saying anything about any of the other awesome presentations, but the one that's I hope to take to heart personally in my interaction with the ALN is Admiral Allen's keynote and opening statements from Wednesday. It is stunningly good stuff. I think it's watchable multiple times. The man is just a force moving forward, and he inspires you to be that same force. So I'm going to try to actualize that in my through the ALN, especially this year.
Excellent. So Jack, you've been made a panelist. If you'd like to turn on your microphone, and if you're
there, he is.
Yeah. Hi, Jack.
Hello. I guess first, I want to be a little bit of an echo. I want to echo the thanks that Mike gave to Jim yesterday or maybe the day before, for having started this whole ALN and getting this ball rolling and kind of being our guiding light for ever since the beginning. And I think we definitely wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be today if it weren't for Jim. So
yes.
So I thank him for that. And I also want to echo Jim's thanks to you, because you were really the spark plug, maybe the whole enchilada for this conference. I mean, got all these amazing people together, did a great job facilitating a lot of the presentations. It was really astonishing. And I think all of us have said this year after year, is that every year we sort of outdo the previous years. And this was no exception. I mean, this was really an outstanding step forward for the ALN. I'd like to just mention a couple things that may not be as obvious to some of the folks on the presentation. And that is that the ALN, we talk about leadership, but one of the things that I took away from this year was the ALN's growing leadership in the international asset management community. And that won't be obvious to a lot of people, but I mean, Jim was the leader of the US delegation that helped create ISO 55000. And he's still a very active member of Working Group 4, which is revising ISO 55000. He's also a very active member of the US TAG, which is the United States organization that is like sort of the permanent delegation to TC 251 and ISO. So the US TAG is the United States voice in asset management policy internationally. And I think, to your point, I mean, the US TAG, not only are we shining a light on the US TAG for a broader audience, but we've actually helped position the US tag to do some really impressive things in the international community. The work that we're doing with them, the ALN's doing with them to support the new website that they're putting up, which basically is going to take the international, what they call the known certified organizations list, and turn that into a much more robust picture of organizations in the US, not only those that are certified, which is not all that many, but also a whole bunch of them that are interested and active in asset management and are at different stages in the asset management maturity. So I think I'm hopeful that what we are doing to support the US tag and what the US tag is doing is going to show the rest of the world how the different countries can highlight asset management activities in their countries. And that, I think, could lead to the increased adoption of asset management in those countries and ultimately around the world. I was so glad to see Moshe, and I was really glad to see what Moshe and his team presented on the law enforcement asset leadership strategy, because that was one of the best examples of how our sector-based national asset leadership strategy has been evolving. And there were some others. The asset leadership boards are other examples of how the sector-based approach to highlighting asset management successes, and not only highlighting, but also moving the ball and making more progress in the different sectors is something that ALN can be, I think, really proud of. And one of the things that I don't know that people are aware of, and not necessarily they should be, but the NALs, I've been working with Working Group 7, which is on a new international asset management standard that's basically aimed at helping countries develop asset management more fully through their public policies in those countries, through the laws and regulations and so forth in those countries. And I've been able to use the NALs as an example of how that might actually work. And a lot of the things that we've learned in putting the NALs together, I think, are going to find their way into this new international standard. And I think that's something the ALN can be very proud of. Another thing I think that from terms of ALN's leadership role, when we saw the presentation with Jack Dempsey and the other folks on the board, the study that was done by under the Federal Facilities Council and the board for Infrastructure and Constructed Environment, that was led by two ALN senior fellows. Jack was the deputy chairman of that group, and Mike Imany, another senior fellow, was the chairman or the leader of that group. That's like the two top positions in this extraordinarily important study were led by ALN senior fellows. Jack Dempsey is also the convener of Working Group 4. So Jack is the person who is leading the effort to put all of the views of the international community together in revising ISO 55000. That's huge. One of our members, who will go nameless, was recently named the deputy convener of Working Group 3. So that's another example of where we're starting to get a more visible, role, play a more visible role, a more meaningful role in the international world. So I think in terms of leadership, I think the ALN is demonstrating leadership, not only highlighting leadership across the US in terms of who the leaders are in advancing asset management, but also taking a leadership role in the international community. And I hope you will introduce another one of the people that are showing leadership in really important aspects of asset management, and that would be our colleague Cecilia.
Well, we will go to Cecilia next, but I wanted to point out that Jack Kelly, who's the ALN board member and an ALN senior fellow himself, was part of the planning committee. And he was the one who reminded us that this annual event is about cementing relationships with existing organizations. And so you wonder why it was a 5-week event. We've got relationships with a lot of organizations. So we needed to do many programs to fulfill Jack's very wise initiative. And the fact that the GAO was so fun, they enjoyed the panel, we need to remember that. And basically, I think what we're doing is growing into a year-round organization where maybe if we spread out the intensity of this over a few quarters, it might not be so intense in the fall. So we'll figure out how to do that. Cecilia, are you able to make comments?
I'm always able to make comments, you know that. No, I just have to say kudos to ALN. This last month has been very exhilarating. You're right in one sense, Mike, that it was jam-packed. It was jam-packed, but it was jam-packed to the point where after one or two or three, I was like, I don't want to miss anything. I don't want, even though we were recording it and I knew I could get to listen later, the issue of being there live and being able to ask some questions or hear the commentary, it just was very exhilarating. And
Must-see TV.
it felt like must-see TV, but it felt like also classroom. Must be in the classroom to learn. And it was interesting because, you know, being somebody who loves diversity and inclusion, we included so much and such diverse aspects, but yet that common thread. And even though you think you're joking and that it's self-aggrandizement to have the ALN pieces or spots when people said, thanks to the ALN, I did A, B, C, D. Actually, it's the A, B, C, D that follows the thank you that needs to be highlighted. And I think it's really important that we do that and not be too shy about it, because what you have done is create a network and a community that you are building that is centered on following the same framework, an easy common framework that we can utilize globally. And you are encouraging people by showing them, like Nick says, telling the stories. These have been storytelling moments. They were not boring presentations that were just like cut and dry on asset management, and we'll have to do the widgets here and we'll do this and we'll do that. No, it was the story of a journey of strategy, of implementation, of looking beyond the organizations that were involved to see how they could do better and what impact could be had. One of the things I really loved, and Danielle might speak on it, if that's our Daniel.
Yes,
for
next.
ALN.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I won't steal his, but one thing I kept thinking of you, Danielle, because risk mitigation was discussed in every panel that I listened to. Every session, there was a discussion about risk mitigation. And then we, of course, helped them think about the equity and the stakeholders and relevant stakeholders. But the whole factor of thinking that this is a global standard and seeing the stories told globally of how it's being utilized and the impact it's having has been very rewarding to watch and learn from. So kudos to you, Jim, for your vision, for your continual involvement in the evolution of this standard. You are our banner carrier for the equity piece. Remember, do not forget that. I don't know if we need to find some way to get on the 4.2 portion of the TAC to make sure that template that we've created gets included. But that's something, kudos to you. And Mike, I'm sorry, you don't want to take the credit, but your perseverance and persistence in reaching out to all of these different organizations to create the collaborative attitude. I gotta tell you, did you not notice that some of your participants in earlier panels jumped into some of the later panels, and then they were raising these different issues that we had challenged them with, and it was clear they had been thinking about it some more. So
Well,
what
thank you. I will take that. Thank you.
Yeah, so what I will just wrap up and say is that ALN is very much a special organization and showing leadership. And so it's been great fun to become a part of it and to learn from it. And I'm looking forward to what we do next year. But more importantly, I'm looking forward to us nurturing the relationships and leveraging them to make a difference out there in the world. So thank you both. Jim
Well, Cecilia,
and Nick beyond belief for his technological skills. Woo-hoo. I am sorry, Nick. Without you, every once in a while when you weren't around, it was pretty funny. I just want to say, when you weren't around, we were like, oh, and all I could think of is, where is Nick? Thank you, Nick.
yeah, you are much needed component in this.
And not just for your technological skills, but for your passion and your intuitiveness and your listening skills. You do a great job with that.
Yeah.
And I want to give Grant Thornton a plug again, Moshe, for the work that you did to support us and getting Governor O'Malley, because that was a very powerful session that we had on the infrastructure, advancing equity with infrastructure. I've shared it with others and people are very impressed by it. So we want to keep you guys always thinking about ways to help us do this. So thank you very much, Moshe, for the support Grant Thornton has given to ALN. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And convey to Governor O'Malley that he still has to come even when we don't have your support.
Yeah, well, and we've been long members of ALN, and
right.
Every resource that we can bring to bear to help bolster asset management, help bolster ALN and its community, and tackle high priority areas, right? And we're going to do that. So I really appreciate that. Thanks. It means a lot, and we'll continue to support and hopefully bring Governor O'Malley back and his friends.
Yeah, and other friends. We can expand. We're inclusive. Yeah. So
yes,
that's right.
That's right. And you can spread the word of what you're doing with us as well, because we are touching a lot of different points, even though we say we're not everything to everybody. There's a way to use ISO 55000 to do almost anything.
Yes. Well, and Cecilia, thank you to you, because you're facilitating the Spanish language program was critical. Danielle was not able to make it. Danielle, can you join us now? Oh, please go ahead.
I just have a couple things I have to say. One is I've been in discussions already, and Mike doesn't even know about this yet, about a roundtable that would potentially incorporate Governor O'Malley again in a really, really interesting way. So, definitely thinking on that. But I also wanted to point out that from the beginning, as we've planned our conferences, just from an internals perspective, we've always looked for diversity in our speakers and panelists and presenters. And it was hard at the beginning. We had too many old white guys, way too many old white guys. And we still got some old white guys, but we're not all that. Anyhow, but every year, I think we've gotten better at it. And more importantly, it's gotten easier. So that means there's more good choices, from the diversity of the pool of people we're looking at to be, that are thought leaders and structural leaders is really increased. So that's really exciting to me.
And
Not the least of which is you, Cecilia. But,
and Moshe, once again, is highlighted because his law enforcement panel was, I think, the most inclusive panel we've ever had. So that was spectacular.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And we're very lucky to have a star-studded group of leaders from across Homeland Security, which has done a fantastic job of promoting underserved communities or diversity or various different aspects of of the United States. So, excellent.
Yeah. And Jim, you mustn't complain about old white men, because old white men are to be included as well. And the brilliance and intellectual reservoir that you guys share, the balancing of that as against some of the newer people and the journeys that they're having, and the drawing of not conclusions, of parallels that went on during many of these sessions. It was fascinating to hear the older stories of how things used to be and how they are currently. So that's important to understand where we've been and where we're going. That Abraham Lincoln quote, right?
Yes.
Governor O'Malley.
Yes.
Danielle,
thank you for joining us.
Nice to see you and hear you again.
It's been a while. You have a beard now. You didn't have a beard the last time I saw you.
Resting my machine. Okay, unfortunately, I had a lot of commitments, a lot of meetings, and I couldn't stay in all the sessions. But fortunately, they were recorded. Then I could see some of them, especially the Spanish session, obviously.
Yes.
And the former O'Malley too. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For the team, for all of you. That it was a very exciting. Well, I don't know in English, but it was like a congress, like.
sí.
But.
Dímelo y yo lo digo.
But I need to think in English.
Yes, you do. But we have diversity of languages too, so.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so, yes, go ahead.
Daniel, you saw how the utility companies are willing to participate in other programs. How do you think ALN Español can leverage these resources, these people who are willing to participate in 2022?
Yes, I think that for next year, we could make a contact with a company in Colombia, the biggest company in Colombia for transportation, and not only power transportation.
Yes,
they are in vehicle transportation. They had many ways, concesiones, Cecilia, concesiones de vías.
Concesiones de vías, many different concessions of
highways
of routes.
Highways
Of routes. They have
routes.
concessions of
Yeah.
routes.
And they were certified this year in ISO 55000, and they started in maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and they had good stories.
Which company?
To tell.
Which?
ISA. ISA. ISA.
ISA, okay.
In Spanish, it's called ISA. ISA.
Yes.
I think that it could be contact for next year. And maybe maybe there's or will be another companies in distribution, power distribution, too, because they in 2023 they will be certified in ISO 55000, and next year we will have I think 4 or 5 companies certified, and then it's a good option. I was in contact with Jack about that, because these companies are need to be certified because the government was made a law, or
Right.
not a regulation,
Right.
and it's a good experience for the ISO 50010. 11, no? It's
Oh,
correct.
for the government. Okay. Yes.
government.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's useful for Jack, my information, but I hope.
Okay, so there's
Yeah.
2 things there. One
And I-
is a potential ALN Espanol electric utility summit or conference or something, and then involvement in development of the standard.
And but I'd also say that we could also do something, because when we had the other utilities on, we didn't go into it as much as we might have, the issues of the stories that were happening in Latin America and the regulatory impact of the regulations that Danielle has talked about. The ALN Espanol in English needs to be sent to everybody that was on that other panel with a little note that says, here's some of what we have seen happening in another part of the world. Because that was an international panel also, but their focus, they didn't have the same focus. So
So we can make it be more focused. I'm
Right.
really excited about
we can
how
leverage.
that is a set up for success for 2022.
And Danielle did not even mention water. And I happen to know that he knows something about water and Spanish language countries too, but we won't press him today.
Well,
Yeah.
that'll be for our planning for ALN Espanol. I see Jack has his hand up and Jesse is now with us. So Jack has your hand is up.
I know. So I just wanted to mention that, just to kind of to build on the comments I made earlier about ALNs being, having a more of an international presence, a more leadership presence. In addition to that, I mean, your panel with Danielle, ALN Espanol is another great example of how ALN's reach is extended, internationally, not, both to another language and also to another part of our hemisphere and other Spanish-speaking countries in the world. But also, in addition, that the one things I noticed this year were, and this builds on one of the things you mentioned, Mike, with the partnership that you've developed with the Asset Management Council in Australia. This year we had more international participants, not only as attendees, but also as speakers and participants in our work. And that's a first that we've had that. And a lot of those folks are folks that Jim and I deal with in these TC 251 working groups. But to me, that's another really important step forward. And I think that we want to continue that outreach and continue to actually use ALN as a way to bring the world together in ways that I don't know anybody else is doing.
Before we go on to Jesse, I just want to point out that Jim Dieter has always insisted that we have some kind of international presence at the conference. And thank you, Jack, for acknowledging how much that has grown. The seed he planted is blossoming. He also insisted all along that we be more diverse and equitable and inclusive. And in 2020, he insisted from the very beginning of the planning that we have advancing equity with asset leadership as one of the meetings, and that has grown into one of our biggest impacts on that policy by Portland. And he also started ALN Espanol and insisted that that be one of the things that we do. So good leadership, Jim. So Jesse, thank you for joining us.
Nice to see everybody.
Hey, Jesse.
That's it.
What did you think? What do you think it means for next year?
I think it's great. Everything. This was my first ALN event, annual event. So I'm really impressed. I thought there was just great leadership shown throughout the agenda and to all the people that were speaking, all the people that were on the panels. I think there's really some pretty interesting things here. You know, we're talking a little bit about diversity. There's a lot of good things that are going on here in the United States with asset management. We talked a little bit about how, you know, we're kind of in this little mini renaissance or pre-renaissance here in the US on some of these ideas around asset management, but there's so much more in some of the other countries that we can learn from. And I'm really excited about the diversity that going internationally will bring to this. And then a second thought was just, you know, I was on that panel with Mildred Chua from MTA. Great diversity there as well. There's been some tremendous advances with women in asset leadership, women in transportation. Very happy to see that going forward. And it was really an honor to be on a panel with Mildred for that.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that, because in the pre-event practice meeting for the Government Accountability Office panel, Amelia Sekchoy insisted that she be mentioned as being recognized as a woman in asset management. And she was joking, and there was a lot of laughing. That was like one of the funnest panels. But she was proud that she was being recognized that, and not as just for herself, but just she wants to have more women in asset management. And so it was great that we gave a platform for so many women.
And not only did you give a platform for so many women, the women that were there were uber talented and
Yes.
extremely strategic, thoughtful in their process of what they're doing, and recognizing that this is not just, like we said, was it Jack that said it's a marathon? It's not a race, it's a marathon. But I like to say it's like Weight Watchers, it's not a diet, it's a way of life. And so asset management is integral to everything that you do in life. You've got to manage your assets no matter what organization you are. But those women were busy showing how they had come and strategically tackled everything and what they were doing to implement and the progress that had been made. It was pretty exciting. And it was overall, we really did have diverse panelists in all senses of the word.
Mhm.
Geographically diverse, functionally diverse, male, female, black, white, Hispanic.
Mhm.
We didn't have any Asians. We've got to work on that.
Well,
Oh wait, we had Mildred. Mildred
is a Native American.
she's Native American. She's not.
Yeah.
Asian
So
at
Jesse,
all.
was there anything else you wanted to say?
I did. I forgot to mention Megan also. And it was only because I just jumped off a call right before I joined into this and I wasn't thinking, but Megan was also on the panel. She was incredibly talented and very smart and contributed a lot there. And Kimon, who I think has some Japanese origins.
Thank
Yeah,
you. There we go. Tell Kimon I'm
Japanese
sorry.
and Greek. He's
And Greek.
Japanese and Greek. Yeah.
Yeah.
So excellent. And Jesse, thank you for, this is your first year as LCE as an organizational member. So we really appreciate the fresh insights and energy that you bring. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
And Rich is an ALN board member and senior fellow. So Rich, please.
Yeah, I think when we talked about where do we go from here, and I think that one of the most important things is business rhythm. In other words, we continue to do what we have done, learn from where we've been, and move forward. And again, also the value in asking. You know that Mike, if you didn't ask, it's very difficult to get people to show up, and it's important to ask and be bold in asking, and you have been. The same with Jim. You're bold in asking as well, calling and make sure people feel included and tackle big subjects. I think those are the real keys of what we do. The other thing, of course, when we create value, we are creating value right now as this is being recorded. And that value, again, will last. You know, this will last quite some time. And I think I was said earlier, but the fact is that's the way it is. It's not, it becomes a durable asset. At the same time, can be reviewed many times. And that probably should be something of which we push out there, very similar to what TED Talks does. You know, these are the top 10 presentations or whatever, and where they keep reminding people that this is what is being said, this is what is out there, and also encourage where that is in fact sent to others. But we're on the right track.
Yeah.
We just
I
continue.
want to remind everybody that was it last year or the year before that somebody was trying to remember that, you know, was involved in one of our events, was trying to remember Mike's name, his last name. And she said, what's that man's name? Mike Boldenaro? And I thought, Mike Boldenaro, that is it.
You lived up to your name.
Yes, I'll take that one too. So looking forward, as I mentioned earlier, we already have plans with the Australian Asset Management Council to continue that. We've got plans with the Government Finance Officers Association. We've got plans with the Licensing Executive Society.
IAM.
IAM, we are in talks about how to coordinate our efforts there. The National Property Managers Association, John Shellness mentioned what a diverse group that is. So John, thank you. We do come out of that organization very directly. And John, you can talk about anything you want to if you want to be made a panelist, but you do not have to be made a panelist. You're a organizational member, so you have the right to speak and want to make sure you're included. The Society of American Military Engineers has reached out to us to be more interactive, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple of other associations. So that is part of what we're planning on doing. So John, so glad to have you join us for the first time, and you get to end the conference.
Oh, wonderful. Well, look, I too want to say a big thank you to everybody. You know, we've not had much in the way of interactions other than emails. And as I've said before, I'm definitely a newcomer and a bit of an outsider to this area of discipline, but having been a part, this is now the second ALN training session that I've gone through, and I've gone now to 3 national property management trainings and groups, and I'm involved in police department trainings and conferences. And it's extremely beneficial listening in to what you're doing. And it's wonderful to really be what I think is a part of history where there is this kind of change happening where all the stuff that we have as a society is not a kind of a secondary thought, but is becoming a primary part of how we manage ourselves and manage the world around us. And so I'm very grateful to be a part of that.
Well, thank you very much. I think that aligns with Jim Dieter's philosophy and what he wanted to achieve with the Asset Leadership Network. So Jim, why don't we let you actually have the last words before we close out?
Oh, but before Jim does, can I just say one thank you to ALN for the most important asset that you all have created, which is the most important asset of any organization. It's relationships. We are building some great relationships, and thank you, Mike, for being bold and narrow, and Jim for being visionary. I swear, I think I said
And
that-
Nick for being capable.
Oh Lord, thank you. Capable and a great reminder. So these relationships are so key, Danielle, everyone reaching out, and we are making history in our thought leadership. So Jim, I thank you for your vision and always making sure that Mike does your bidding, and Mike and pushing
you have
all
no
of us
idea.
to
That's not
do
great.
and participate. Or you do Mike's bidding. Either way, it works. And Nick keeps us all together. It's great.
So I just wanted to quickly say, before I let Nick have the last word, actually,
Okay.
but, Danielle wants the word too. Okay, well, we'll go.
Yeah,
from-
there's no
Yeah.
time limit to this. We don't have to stop
Okay.
at any time.
Okay.
But I wanted to say, while we were talking, I went back and just looked at the agenda and thought, well, gee, are we missing, so there's, people are going to feel left out, but we didn't mention them. And I looked at the agenda and went, oh my God, we didn't talk about Uberlytics and the water panel. We didn't talk about ABS at all. And they're, in two ways, a patron member. And we're very responsible for a lot what we put together.
For the ALN Espanol, you're absolutely right. I was very remiss. If it wasn't for ABS, we would not have had that incredible surge forward with the ALN Espanol panel. Good point.
And one of my favorite things, and it's hard to have a favorite, but the Six Capitals thing with Mary
Yes.
Adams and those people was like, wow, I mean, like, you gotta watch that one. So the good news is, just like everything we did was a success. So just, a real thanks to everybody that participated. It was, just, it's all about the people. It's all about, I think.
We didn't let
I think-
Art speak. Oh no, Art. Art, are you still there or have you left?
Well, we'll get Art on, yeah.
Uh,
Anyhow, it's the relationships. And I think through our interactive online methodology that we started with Thursday at 4, now to be Thursday at 3, and through these roundtables, we have found ways to connect with each other, even when we can't physically be in the same place. And in some ways, it's even better than being in the same place. Obviously, it's not the same as being in the same place, but I think we've done a great job overall, all of us, in making it work in a virtual world. And I got to say, video is a big part of it. I've been on meetings where nobody turns on their camera, and I'm like, it's like listening to radio when you got a TV in the other room. I mean, it's like, really? Turn on your video, Anyhow, Danielle, you're next, I think.
Yeah, I forgot a comment. I suggest for next year include many or some experiences about cost, risk, performance analysis, because if you review all the conferences, all people talk about risk only. And maybe Jim remember my point that cost, risk, performance is not a good idea because it's only risk. Cost is a part of risk, and performance too. And then in ISO 55000, and and ISO 55002 talk about this statement: cost, risk, performance. But if you talk with many advisories, they say, oh, well, you need a balance, but how? Nobody said how. All say you need to make a balance of cost, risk, and performance, but nobody talk about how.
So you want to get deeper stories of how to balance risk management, the cost, and the performance.
Or
Specific.
it's only risk analysis.
No, it's more. It's more. It's more.
My point is because cost is part of the risk and performance is part of the risk, and then at the end is risk
It's
analysis.
all risk. Yes.
And it's
Then
all
then if I don't know if
Yes.
someone has used
risk, cost, and performance is only really one thing.
one thing.
It's one thing, risk. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
That's
get
my
it.
point.
Yes.
but you want the story to be told a little bit differently. I see Jack raising his hand. Again, I mean, mine.
Then for next year, because I was looking for some conferences and all people talk about risk. Well, we made risk, criticality, and etc. But it was only risk.
So just thanks to Cecilia for recognizing the old white guy. One of the things that I want to, I had forgotten that we're supposed to be looking forward and what we want to do next year. And I want to build on a point that Mike made, which is a couple of points. And that is how maybe what we should be thinking about so mechanically what we probably ought to do within the next couple of weeks, once we've all kind of taken a breath and relaxed, is come together in kind of revitalized planning committee and not plan next year's conference, but plan next year and think about next year as a conference that's spread out over 12 months.
Yeah.
12 months. And how can we, because we crammed so much content into the 5 weeks that we had. So maybe what we ought to be thinking about, and this kind of builds on the Thursday at 4, now Thursday at 3 idea, which is a weekly conversation, but maybe in addition to the weekly conversation, we can have a monthly, maybe several conversations. But that way, we can become kind of a normal part of people's, experience, if you will, not just a once a year experience, but a kind of an ongoing experience and an ongoing opportunity for collaboration. Just a thought.
I like it.
The 2022 conference, and it's a year-long one. All right, we'll put some thought into that. And Malik Barami is online, and I don't think I'm going to ask him. I think we're just going to go ahead and make him a panelist. And if you don't turn on your microphone and your camera, then we know you don't want to talk. But
first, I have to apologize to him because we've been trying to connect, just to have a phone call for a month, and I failed. So sorry, Mark.
Well, he's a busy guy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Here, I'll turn on my camera too, but then you guys have to see my tie-dye t-shirt. So,
Hey, cool.
just cope with that.
I saw the other ones at Wrigley Field this summer. No need to be embarrassed. about
Actually,
tie-dye
you're
t-shirt.
styling if you have a tie-dye. We need to see the tie-dye better. We can't see it, Malik.
Today is Friday.
Hi.
Today is Friday.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I'm sitting out in the back porch and trying to enjoy the little bit of nice weather we have before the cold front comes in. But no, I thought it is, I would say there's immense value in getting different perspectives. I think what you guys have accomplished is by bringing everybody to the same table is you're allowing a forum for all the different points of views and perspectives and their concerns to be shared. And, you know, even if we don't actively think about these things as we go throughout our days, it's kind of in the back of our mind, and we're still cognizant of these impacts, effects, and whatever you want to call it. And I think it's going to be a combination of solutions. It's kind of like making a cake, right? You got to have the right recipe to be able to get that nice rise out of the cake in the oven. So I think that what you guys have done is really great. It's created for me, myself, I mean, I've connected with a lot of people through ALN and have had the opportunity to be able to speak to, for example, Chris about, you know, Parks and Rec and what does asset management mean in our world. But it also helps highlight the congruency between the different issues that exist. So thank you for that. I sincerely have enjoyed it. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We did have an Advancing Equity with Asset Leadership Board meeting prior to the conference. And one of the things we were thinking of doing was having a Parks and Recreation Asset Management with you, program with you, Chris, and Marty Rowland from New York City. But what happened was Chris's asset management policy for the city of Portland got published, and that is, I don't know if you've seen that. I can send that to you. It's
please do.
Spectacular. It can double as an equity policy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're on mute, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I was.
Yeah.
It was really well crafted, and it's worth a listen to that video, because that one was a very good session. Chris did a great job, and since you all are aligned, but we will still do that panel that we talked about for the parks, but that'll be in 2022.
Right.
Right.
That's the
Sounds
next
good.
step. Yeah, exactly.
And I'll try not to have a tie-dye shirt on for you guys.
Why? It doesn't matter. It's what's up here that comes out of here from here that
Yeah.
counts, not what you're wearing necessarily.
Jim and I could both just go a couple steps over and put on a tie-dye t-shirt, you know, like that. It's not a big deal.
I don't really have one.
I know
I'm
Jim
not
does.
styling.
So
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
all right, so Jim, you didn't, thank you actually for joining in on this. We wanted you to be involved, and now we could say we had you involved in 2022 or 2021. Yes. So Jim, you were going to say something and then let Nick close it. So Nick has had time to think of what he's going to say, but he's got just a little bit more. So go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I get to do a second closing. Yeah, no, that's good. No, the Jack's comments about spreading it out over the years, definitely, you know, that's my thoughts go in that direction as well. You know, these roundtables, you know, I'm thinking, you know, once a month roundtables.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking to build events, you know, maybe quarterly around the various sector asset leadership boards that Mike's, you know, helped us construct, you know, so we can talk about water and have, you know, a day or a half a day or 2 days or whatever's appropriate about water, and include presentations and include, you know, discussions and roundtables and interviews. You know, we can, you know, hone what works for people, and you know, how to appeal to people, how to attract an audience, and how to have an impact, you know, are all important considerations. But keeping Nick happy is our number one. So Nick, that's to you.
Yeah, I don't know how to sum all that up. Maybe I'll go off on a tangent and say that the only constant is change. There are very few constants around in this world, and change is the one we can expect to come upon us throughout and forever. And I'd just like to point out what makes me so passionate and motivated about this work is the chance, and I think Mary Adams said this in her Six Capitals talk, that with ISO 55000 or some other form of good, comprehensive, and holistic asset management framework, that gives you the chance to turn change that is inevitable into an opportunity, and to mitigate the risk of the change that is inevitable, and to capitalize on the opportunity that is also innate in change. And so I know that change is coming down the pipeline for this nation and the world, and I'm excited, armed with the tools of ISO 55000 and the discipline that we have been exalting in this conference and expanding. I'm excited, armed with that tool, the opportunities that we as a world can realize. So,
Well played, young Nick. That was, I don't think anybody could have done it any better than that. Thank you. And thanks to everybody who participated, everyone who joined, and all the attendees who showed up also.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week at 3. Thursday at 3 is now the time, not 4.